6 smart phrases that stop people from talking over you. Stoicism, Stoic Philosophy. Have you ever been in the middle of saying something important, something you believed in, something that mattered, and someone just talked right over you, cut you off, dismissed you, or simply acted as if your words were background noise? It happens to nearly everyone. In meetings, in families, in friendships, in conversations where you should have had every right to be heard. And the worst part, most people respond in one of two ways. They either explode in frustration, raising their voice, turning the moment into a confrontation, or they go completely silent. They shrink. They swallow their words. They walk away feeling invisible. But there is a third way. A smarter way. A way that was practiced and refined over 2,000 years ago by some of the most powerful minds who ever lived, the Stoics. The Stoics were not weak people. Marcus Aurelius commanded the Roman Empire. Epictetus was born into slavery and still carved out a philosophy so strong it shaped emperors. Seneca advised the most powerful ruler in the known world. These were not men who allowed themselves to be silenced. And they didn't fight their way into being heard either. They used something far more powerful than volume or anger. They used wisdom. They used calm. They used the right words at the right moment. Today, we are going to look at 6 smart phrases, rooted in Stoic philosophy, that will stop people from talking over you. Not by making you louder, but by making you undeniable. And if this kind of content speaks to you, if you want to grow stronger, calmer, and more powerful in how you carry yourself in this world, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deep into the philosophy, the mindset, and the practical tools that help you become the kind of person who cannot be ignored. The Stoic Foundation. Why words are a form of power. Before we get into the phrases themselves, we need to understand something crucial. The Stoics did not view communication as a performance. They didn't teach people to be clever for the sake of appearing clever. For the Stoics, words were a reflection of character. And character was the highest form of power a person could possess. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, a private journal never intended for the public, that a person should speak only when they are certain their words improve upon silence. This is not timidity, it is discipline. It is the understanding that every word you speak carries weight, and that weight either builds your authority or erodes it. Epictetus, who was once physically broken by his enslaver but never mentally broken, taught that no one can truly silence you if you understand the difference between what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control whether someone interrupts you, but you can control how you respond. You can control your composure. And composure, in any room, is commanding. Seneca wrote in his letters that the person who remains calm while others grow loud has already won a significant victory. Because emotion is readable. And when people see that their attempt to dominate you has produced nothing in you, no panic, no retreat, no anger, they are forced to reckon with something they did not expect. Stillness. And stillness is deeply disarming. This is the foundation. These 6 phrases are not scripts to memorize and robotically deploy. They are principles made verbal. They are the Stoic mind, given a voice. Keep that in mind as we walk through each one. Phrase 1. I wasn't finished. Let me complete my thought. Simple. Direct. Dignified. This is the first phrase, and in many ways it is the most important, because it is the one most people are afraid to say. There is something in us, conditioned over years of social anxiety and fear of conflict, that makes us believe it is impolite to reclaim our own voice. We were taught to yield, to smile, to let it go, and so when someone cuts us off, we often just let them. We tell ourselves it wasn't that important anyway. We tell ourselves we'll say it later. We rarely do. The Stoics would call this a failure of self-respect dressed up as politeness. Marcus Aurelius was deeply aware of the tendency to confuse submission with peace. True peace, Stoic peace, is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of inner order. And inner order means knowing when something matters enough to stand firm. When you are cut off mid-sentence, your thought had value. You had value. To abandon it without a word is not peace, it is erasure. And you are not here to be erased. I wasn't finished. Let me complete my thought. Spoken calmly, not as a challenge, not as an accusation, simply as a statement of fact. What this phrase does is extraordinary in its subtlety. It reframes the interaction. It reminds everyone present, including you, that you are still in the conversation. It signals that you are aware of what happened, and that you are not going to pretend it didn't happen. It also does something the Stoics would deeply appreciate. It keeps you in control of your own narrative. Epictetus taught that our opinions, our judgments, our choices, these are ours alone. No one can take them unless we hand them over. When you let someone else's interruption end your sentence, you are handing something over. This phrase takes it back. Say it without aggression. Say it with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their words have weight. Because they do, and the room will feel that. Phrase 2. I'd like to finish, and then I want to hear everything you have to say. This phrase is a masterpiece of Stoic diplomacy. It does two things simultaneously that most people never think to combine. It asserts your right to complete your thought, and it honors the other person's desire to be heard. It is not a power play. It is not passive-aggressive. It is what Marcus Aurelius called acting in accordance with nature, because human beings, by nature, want to be listened to. And when you acknowledge that desire even while holding your ground, you transform a moment of tension into a moment of mutual respect. Think about what usually happens when two people talk over each other. Both are fighting to be heard. Neither is truly listening. The conversation becomes a competition, and whatever wisdom or truth either person was trying to share gets lost in the noise. Nobody wins. Both walk away frustrated. This is the exact kind of disordered situation the Stoics spent their lives trying to avoid. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of what makes an interruption feel threatening is not the interruption itself. It is the fear that if you don't speak now, loudly, forcefully, you will never be heard. That fear is the real enemy. And this phrase dissolves it, because when you say, I'd like to finish, and then I want to hear everything you have to say, you are demonstrating something rare. You are demonstrating that you are not threatened, that you are not competing, that you are willing to give the other person exactly what they want, their moment, as long as you are given yours first. This is not weakness. This is the negotiation of equals. People who are desperate to be heard interrupt. People who are secure in being heard wait. This phrase positions you as the latter. And others sense that security. They feel it in your tone. They see it in your stillness. And almost always, they honor it. Phrase 3. That's worth discussing. Let me finish this point first. Here is where Stoic strategy becomes almost elegant. Instead of pushing back against the interruption, you do something unexpected. You validate it. You say, in essence, what you have to say has value, and I will give it its due attention. But first, I need you to give me mine. This is disarming, because the person who interrupted you was almost certainly motivated by one of a few things. Maybe they were excited. Maybe they disagreed. Maybe they felt their idea was urgent. Whatever the reason, they felt their contribution mattered. And rather than dismissing that feeling, this phrase acknowledges it. It says, I see you. I will come to you. Just not yet. Marcus Aurelius wrote that to deal with an angry or disruptive person, you must first understand what they want. Because almost always, what they want is simply to be acknowledged. This phrase gives them that acknowledgement immediately, which often diffuses the tension entirely, while still keeping the floor beneath your feet. There is something else happening here, too. By saying, that's worth discussing, you are exercising a form of Stoic generosity. You are choosing to assume the best of the person who interrupted you. Maybe they weren't being dismissive. Maybe they were just eager. By treating their interruption as a worthy contribution rather than an attack, you elevate the entire conversation. You model the behavior you want to receive. And here is what the Stoics understood about modeling behavior. When you consistently respond to chaos with order, to rudeness with dignity, to interruption with calm clarity, you change the atmosphere around you. People begin to calibrate to your level. Over time, the person who once talked over you starts to actually wait. Not because you forced them to, but because your example made them want to. That is real influence. That is Stoic power. Phrase 4. I notice we keep interrupting each other. Can we agree to let each other finish? This phrase requires a particular kind of courage. The courage of honesty. Most people in uncomfortable conversations refuse to name what is actually happening. They dance around it, they hint at it, they grow resentful of it in silence. But the Stoics prized something called parrhesia, frank, fearless speech. The willingness to say the true thing, even when it is uncomfortable, with the intent of improving the situation rather than winning an argument. I notice we keep interrupting each other, is exactly that. It is honest, it is calm, and crucially, it is inclusive. It does not say you keep interrupting me, which would be an accusation, a positioning of yourself as victim and the other person as aggressor. It says we, which makes it a shared problem, calling for a shared solution. This is strategic empathy at its most refined. Epictetus taught that before you speak, you should ask yourself 3 things. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? This phrase passes all 3 tests. It is true, the interruptions are happening. It is necessary, the pattern needs to be addressed or the conversation will deteriorate. And it is kind, it frames the issue in a way that preserves everyone's dignity. What follows? Can we agree to let each other finish? Is equally important. It is an invitation, not a demand. It creates a micro-contract between 2 people, a shared agreement about how this conversation will proceed. And when people agree to something out loud, they are far more likely to honor it. Social psychology confirms what the Stoics intuited. Explicit agreements change behavior in ways that silent expectations never can. Use this phrase when the pattern of interruption is persistent. When a single correction hasn't been enough, it resets the dynamic entirely, not by asserting dominance, but by proposing a better way forward for both parties. Phrase 5. I'll give you space to respond once I've made my point. This phrase is quiet confidence made audible. There is no question in it, there is no request. There is only an elegant statement of intent. I am going to finish. And when I do, I will give you your turn. The certainty in it is remarkable. It does not ask whether this is acceptable. It simply announces what is going to happen, with a tone so gracious and assured that pushback becomes socially awkward. The Stoics believed deeply in what we might call the anchored self. The person who knows who they are cannot be easily moved by the turbulence of others. When someone interrupts you, there is an implicit message: your words are not important enough to wait for. Most people, consciously or not, absorb that message and retreat. But the anchored person simply does not receive it that way. They hear the interruption, they remain still inside, and they continue from a place of unshaken certainty. "I'll give you space to respond once I've made my point," comes from that place. It communicates without hostility that you are not going to be displaced. But it also communicates something generous, the promise of space. You are not trying to dominate the conversation. You are trying to complete it properly. For both of you, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that it is enough to do good now. Even if I will not remember it, there is something of that spirit here. You are not saying this phrase to win. You are not saying it to punish the person who interrupted you. You are saying it because it is the right way to conduct a meaningful conversation. Because finishing your thought matters, and because giving them their turn afterward is the right thing to do. That integrity, doing the right thing without making a show of it, is the heartbeat of Stoic philosophy. And it is what makes this phrase land with such quiet authority. Phrase 6. Let me anchor this thought, and then we can open it up. This is the most sophisticated phrase on the list. And it is perhaps the most Stoic. The word anchor is doing extraordinary work here. It is a metaphor that does what good metaphors always do. It takes an abstract idea and makes it physical, tangible, real. An anchor is what holds a ship in place against the pull of currents and wind. When you say, "Let me anchor this thought," you are telling everyone in the room that what you are saying has weight. That it deserves to be fixed in place before the conversation moves on, that it will not be swept away by the next interruption or the next loud voice. This phrase is also an act of intellectual generosity. Then we can open it up. Signals that you are not trying to close the conversation. You are not trying to have the last word. You are trying to establish a foundation, a solid, clear, anchored point, from which a richer discussion can grow. You are, in essence, inviting people into your thought rather than barricading them out of it. Seneca wrote that wisdom is not a possession to be hoarded. It is a fire to be shared. This phrase captures that spirit perfectly. It says, "I have something important to say, and once I've said it clearly, I want us to explore it together." This is leadership, not the loud, chest-pounding kind. The quiet, assured kind that people instinctively trust and follow. There is also something deeply Stoic in the choice of the word anchor itself. The Stoics were obsessed with stability, with the unmoved center, with the capacity to remain grounded while everything around you shifts and pulls and storms. To anchor a thought is to refuse to let the noise of a conversation dissolve something true before it has a chance to be heard. Use this phrase when you are in a high-stakes conversation, a meeting, a debate, a difficult family discussion, where the ideas are complex and the stakes are real. It will signal to everyone present that you are not just speaking. You are thinking. And in a world full of people who react, a person who thinks is impossible to ignore. Why these phrases work. The Stoic science of presence. You may have noticed something all 6 phrases have in common. None of them contain anger. None of them are accusatory. None of them require you to raise your voice, slam your fist, or perform outrage to be taken seriously. This is not a coincidence. This is philosophy in action. The Stoics understood something that modern behavioral science has only recently confirmed. Calm is contagious, but so is chaos. When you respond to an interruption with frustration, you signal to everyone in the room, including yourself, that the interruption worked. That it destabilized you, that you can be moved. But when you respond with composure, something remarkable happens. The room adjusts to you. There is a concept in Stoicism called hegemonikon, the governing faculty. It is the rational, reflective center of the human mind that sits above impulse and emotion. The Stoics trained relentlessly to strengthen this faculty, to make it the primary driver of their speech and behavior rather than fear or ego. These 6 phrases are products of the governing faculty. They come from a place that is considered, intentional, and grounded. When you speak from that place, people feel it. They may not be able to name what they are responding to, but they know they are in the presence of someone who has mastered themselves. And people follow the mastered person. They listen to them. They make space for them. Not because they were forced to, but because something in them recognizes authority that comes from the inside. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. These phrases are an expression of that inner strength. Not armor against the world. Not a shield to hide behind. But the natural, outward voice of a person who has done the inner work. How to practice these phrases before you need them. One of the most practical teachings in Stoicism is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. The idea that you should mentally rehearse difficult situations before they arise, so that when they do, you are not caught off guard. You have already been there, in your mind. You have already decided how you will respond. This applies directly to the phrases we have discussed today. You will not be able to use them effectively if the first time you think about them is in the middle of a heated conversation. In that moment, your nervous system is activated, your thoughts are racing, and old habits, silence or explosion, will take over if you have not prepared. So practice. Seriously. Say these phrases out loud, alone, in a quiet room. Feel the words in your mouth. Notice where the emphasis naturally falls. Notice which ones feel uncomfortable. Those are usually the ones that will serve you most, because discomfort often signals growth. Epictetus began every day with a practice of mental rehearsal. He would imagine the difficult people he might encounter, the challenges he might face, and he would walk himself through how a wise person would respond. You can do the same. Think of the conversations in your life where you have been talked over. Replay them in your mind, not to relive the pain of them, but to rehearse a better version. A version where you had these words ready. And then, when the moment comes, and it will come, you will not be scrambling. You will simply reach for something you have already prepared. Something steady, something true, something stoic. The deeper lesson, being heard, begins with how you hear yourself. Here is the truth that sits beneath everything we have talked about today. The reason most people are talked over is not because they are inarticulate. It is not because they lack intelligence or passion or valuable things to say. It is because somewhere inside them, they are not fully convinced that they deserve to be heard. That wound is old for many people. It comes from childhoods where adults talked over them. From relationships where their voice was treated as noise. From environments where being assertive was punished and being quiet was rewarded. And so they carry that old script into new conversations, and they wonder why history keeps repeating itself. The Stoics would say, examine that belief. Hold it up to reason. Is it true that you do not deserve to be heard? Is that a fact? Or is it an assumption you inherited and never questioned? Because the Stoics were relentless investigators of their own beliefs. They did not accept inherited limitations. They questioned them. They tested them. And when they found them false, they discarded them. You deserve to be heard. Your thoughts have value. Not because you are perfect. Not because you are always right. But because you are a rational human being engaged in the shared project of understanding, and that alone entitles you to a voice in the conversation. These 6 phrases are not just tools for managing difficult people. They are daily practice in the belief that you matter. Every time you use one, you are reinforcing that belief, not just for yourself, but for everyone watching. And people are always watching. They are taking notes on how you handle yourself. And when they see you handle yourself with calm authority, they update their understanding of who you are. Become the person who cannot be talked over, not by fighting for attention, but by being so grounded, so clear, so worthy of listening to, that the room naturally quiets when you speak. That is the Stoic way, and it is available to you, starting today. A final word. The philosophers who built Stoicism did not build it for philosophers. They built it for real people, living real lives, facing real difficulty. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the middle of wars, plagues, and political betrayal. Epictetus spoke his teachings from a position of having nothing, no freedom, no wealth, no status. And yet both of them produced a philosophy so powerful it has survived 2,000 years and is still being read, still being studied, still being applied, by people exactly like you. The world has not gotten any quieter since then. People still talk over each other. Meetings are still dominated by the loudest voice rather than the wisest one. Conversations still collapse under the weight of ego and impatience. Nothing has changed in the essential human struggle to be heard. But you now have something that most people don't. You have language. Specific, dignified, Stoic language that allows you to hold your ground without losing your grace. 6 phrases that came from the same tradition that has guided emperors and freed the enslaved and given meaning to millions across centuries. Use them, not as a script, but as an expression of who you are becoming. Someone grounded, someone clear, someone who knows that their voice has value, and who has the wisdom and the courage to ensure it is heard. If this video resonated with you, if you felt something shift in how you think about your voice, your presence, your power in conversation, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe right now, hit that notification bell. Because every week, we go deeper into Stoic philosophy, ancient wisdom, and the timeless principles that help you live with more strength, more clarity, and more dignity in a world that constantly tries to pull you off center. You were not meant to be talked over. You were not meant to be silent. You were meant to be heard. And we will keep showing you how. One conversation, one principle, one truth at a time. Welcome to the channel. Let's grow together.